Hi, 1 and 2 year old leaders. We're preparing for July 24th in our summer series. This week, we're going to be talking about God's covenant with David. We've talked about how God chose Saul to be king over Israel for the very first time that they had a king, and that Saul wasn't doing a great job, so God chose David to be king. But in all of that time where David had been chosen to be king, he wasn't king yet. Not until we're coming up upon this story today in 2 Samuel is David actually appointed king. He is the one in who would be the rightful heir to the kingdom, but he has not become king yet. And so there's a couple things to remember. Remember, Saul didn't like David because he was a good leader, and he became very jealous of him. And so he tried to kill him. And last week we learned that David showed great mercy to Saul when he had a chance to show revenge. And that helped point us to God and ultimately to Jesus. And so today we're going to continue into 2 Samuel chapter 6 and 7. God appointed David to be king, and Jonathan was killed in battle as they continued to fight against the Philistines. And when Saul found out that his son Jonathan was dead, he fell on his sword and he died as well. And so after that, David became king. David moved the Ark of the Covenant that we've talked about several times already. He moved it into Jerusalem, and the people were very happy about that, to have it in its rightful place. And then he settled into the palace there. As David was settling, God showed David that he was giving him peace amongst the people that are close. They aren't at war with the Philistines anymore. And he looked around and he felt like David looked around and he felt something's just not right. He happened to be living in this really amazing palace, but God, the ark, was in a tent. So he decided to build a temple for God. But God's response to him is, "Have I ever asked you to build me a house?" And God says, "No, for 400 years, since I brought you out of Egypt." They've been in the promised land, not exactly the promised land, but they've been close to the promised land and in Israel for 400 years. And in all those 400 years, the ark has dwelt in a tent. And David had been a shepherd, but God made him king. God promised to the Israelites a place to stay so they wouldn't need to move around anymore. God promised to give his people rest from their enemies so they could stop fighting. Though God denied David's desire to build God a house, God promised to make a house for David, a dynasty, different kind of house, a dynasty of his descendants, and an everlasting kingdom. We know that Jesus came from the family of David. And so what God was helping set up is, I don't need all of this. And I need you to stop looking to all of these kingly things, these earthly things that you think make a king, because your Savior King is going to be so very different, but he's going to be exactly what I need him to be. God promised David that every future king of Israel would come from David's family, and David's kingdom would last forever. God kept his promise by sending his son Jesus as one of David's descendants. Jesus is our king who will rule over all God's people forever. So in your small group time today, you're going to play a little musical chairs or musical crowns. You have a couple different crowns in your bag. Really, that's whichever one holds up longest for you to play this game. There's one like this, or there's one like this. And what the kids are going to do is pass the crown around. You're going to sit them in a circle, pass the crown around till the music stops. And when the music stops, whoever's holding the crown, and if you wanted to give 2 people the crown and make it faster and have them do it together, you can do that. When the music stops, they are going to yell, they're going to stand up with their crown and say, God is greater than everything. And then they can sit down and then you can start the game over again. And whenever the music stops, that person's going to stand up and say, God is greater than everything. This week is kind of a week for us to look at everything we've learned so far and to remember where we've come from, but more importantly, where we're going. That God's creating a kingdom in Israel was to help the Israelites see that the coming Savior King was going to be the perfect God, the perfect King. He was not going to be the earthly king that they're looking for, and that they needed to start looking toward greater and bigger things. Your memory verse is, no one is greater than you, Lord. You are great, or no one is like you, Lord. You are great. Your name is mighty in power. Jeremiah 10:6. And if you'd like to do the signs with that, is no one is greater than you, Lord. No one is like you, Lord. I'm so sorry. You are great, and your name is mighty in power. Jeremiah 10:6. And if you'd like to keep playing the game with the kids until their families get there, you're welcome to do that. You could also just let them play around in the room until families come to pick them up. Thank you so much for leading. Thank you for helping us build our teams so that we can continue to serve all of the many kids that we have coming. We are seeing growth, and that's a very exciting thing, which means we need more hands to help us take care of all the kids that we have. So I look forward to meeting all your friends and family members and people that are joining our teams so that we can continue to build relationships that build disciples. Thank you for leading.